Okay, now the fun of exposure to 5G and other non-native EMF. I will just mention briefly here that this is a topic that Susan Owens on the Triangle Oxalates group has spoken about, where it does look like people who are having issues with oxalate may find that it kind of makes them more susceptible to the kinds of effects that you get from non-native EMF. And I would just put 5G in that category because all kinds of Wi-Fi signals, electrical, systems in our homes, there are many things that we have nowadays which are giving off, electromagnetic frequency. And, we may be more concerned about things like 5G, but that doesn't mean some of the other things aren't also producing these non-native EMFs. So this question is catching me just as I'm starting to do some look at this. And interestingly enough, I came into this from a woman who was teaching about leptin, which is another one of our hormones and has to do with satiation, and that leptin's really important to allow us to actually access fat stores on our body that may be available when we need them and which we may want to get rid of because we don't need them. And I'm in that latter category. And as a net result, I've been looking into leptin because after a lifetime of not having what I would consider a happy relationship with food, more of a unhappy relationship with food, I've been looking for the magic of satiation, essentially. What I was looking for was other people eat, they get full, they stop. It's not how it works for me. I decide to stop and then I decide I'm not going to eat more and then I try to hang on. That's been my kind of approach before. And it was almost like food took up too much real estate in my brain. So I got into this area of leptin, which looks like it has a lot to do with appetite control. And I had seen with myself and with others as we were starting to lower oxalate, it looked like oxalate was doing something to mess with appetite regulation. So I was looking at a connection here with this leptin. Well, long story short, this woman who was teaching this leptin course was also talking about things like exposure to morning sunshine, grounding, protecting ourselves from electromagnetic sources, protecting ourselves from what I would call junk blue light, like just a whole series of things, which at the time I was a little skeptical about. The more I dig into this and the more I find real research on it, the less skeptical I am. So when it comes to protecting ourselves, I'm going to say, going to be hard to completely protect yourself because there's non-native EMF everywhere. There's non-native EMF coming off your computer, from lights. Everybody's been forced to buy LED light bulbs. That's not a natural sort of spectrum of light waves. Like there's just so many things going on. So my current approach to this includes I get up in the morning and as close to sunrise as possible, I get the natural sunlight in my eyes. The red light frequencies predominate at sunrise and sunset, and that can be really helpful to the eyes, but it's also good to get it on your skin. And there's some indication that, this red light therapy, even from the natural world, is quite good for us. But then you can also add things like red light therapy with red light devices. And I'm currently looking at that as well. There's some indication that you can actually support your gut microbiome with red light on the skin of the abdomen. Lots of things that we wouldn't have thought about, but we've been slowly, as the human race, unplugging ourselves from the natural world. Maybe there's some indication we have to plug back in order to be able to give us our resilience back. Because I really notice that so many of us just don't have the bounce back that we really should have. So I do this morning exposure to sunlight. At the same time as I'm out there getting my sunlight, at least over the summer, not sure how this is going to work in the winter, but over the summer, I will go out in bare feet. Now, if it's a really cold morning, I'm still out there in bare feet, but I'm wearing like warm enough clothes so that I may be getting UV light on my hands and my face, but I'm not really getting it anywhere else. It's the best I can do. I live in the northern hemisphere and I'm also a pasty white person. So my ancestors came from the northern hemisphere as well. So I'm going to assume that, the seasonal changes are something I'm going to be able to roll with. But I will go out there and get that light and get some grounding. So feet on a natural substance which doesn't have anything that's going to impede electron flow. So what does that mean? It means concrete, stone, your lawn. Those are all good. Asphalt, not. Why? Because asphalt has, the tar is not as electrically conductive. You need to be on a natural surface of some kind, in contact preferably with the earth. The more I do that, the better I feel. It's really been quite interesting. It's not a big change, but it's a subtle and persistent change as I do that. You can buy grounding products. I don't know who's a scam and who's not. I'm still trying to figure that out at the moment, but I did buy a set of grounding sheets for my bed. And it's actually just the bottom sheet. It's not a top sheet. So the bottom sheet has silver thread woven in, and then you've got a little place where you can put it into your wall socket. Seriously, the grounding plug of your wall socket, so that if you've got a typical wall socket now, which is 2 above and 1 in the middle below, it's the one in the middle below where you put your little plug. You're not hooking up to electrical current. That's the grounding plug. It's quite literally in your electrical system in your house to ground your house, to ground the electrical system. So that allows for some electron flow in a very safe, sort of natural way through that bottom sheet that I'm sleeping on. I think I saw changes, but it's easy to talk yourself into something. So again, I'm still on the hunt for how can I be sure that this grounding product is really verifiable and good. I would look now for a product where it came with a meter so I could test the plug to make sure the plug is actually properly grounded. If I've got some ideas on who I think's best, I will also put those in the show notes. You can also get EMF, well, I'm going to call them protective devices. So you can get things like an EMF mat that sits underneath your computer so that your computer's not, especially with a laptop where you may actually be using it in your lab, where it's going to protect you from that EMF radiating down into your body. Those kinds of things may also be helpful. And Bon Charge, which is Boncharge, which is a Canadian company, has a reasonable reputation here. And they have something which they call an EMF protective blanket. I'm thinking about trying that because if I've got my grounded sheet underneath me that's got the silver thread in it, and I've got my EMF blanket over top of me, I may be protecting a fair amount of my body from at least some of the EMF in the environment. Interestingly enough, this company also has beanies. So for those of you who, my husband actually sleeps with a beanie, so I think I'm going to buy him one. Anyhow, he's bald, so he loses a lot of heat out of his head. I'm not sure whether or not I can do this, but I might buy my husband a beanie and see what he thinks. So some of these may be helpful tools. They are unreasonably expensive. So let me just say that up front. They are unreasonably expensive, but it might be worthwhile if you really feel like you're being obviously affected. Probably all of us are affected to some degree, but some of us may be affected a lot more than others, and that may depend on how vulnerable our system is. So in that case, it may be worthwhile to look into it. Last but not least, I actually have a set of glasses, which I wish I'd brought in here, which I have not, but which are blue light blockers. So I've been actually wearing them a fair amount. And it's not because we can't handle some blue light, because if I were to head outside right now, 2:45 in the afternoon here, there'd be lots of blue light because we're getting a full spectrum light from the sun. Right? But what I've heard somebody say, and this kind of makes sense to me, is that you're getting a lot of junk blue light from devices. And so the argument there is don't get your blue light from something like the computer. Get it outside where it's the natural wavelengths, but the quote unquote junk blue light that comes from devices is something you can protect yourself from. So I have started to wear these more often. In fact, I was wearing them most of today as I was working on my computer. And I'd be more than happy to give people an idea of where you can get them because I wear prescription eyewear and they were not horrifically expensive. They were in fact not a lot more than my other regular glasses. I buy them online, which makes it easy. And a lot of the companies that actually sell blue light blocking glasses are charging you an arm and a leg, and there's not a prescription lens in there even. So I think, over time, as there's more companies in the field, it may get a little more competitive. It might be a little easier, but right now I think it's a bit tough. But that protection of my eyes has made a real difference to my sleep. So I have been a person who had some degree of insomnia for at least the last decade. And my insomnia is not the kind where you can't fall asleep. My insomnia is the kind where you can't stay asleep. So I would go to bed and I'd sleep for 2 or 3 hours and I'd wake up. And then I'd sleep for another hour and a half or so and I'd wake up. And then I might sleep for another hour and a half and so and wake up. And then I might sleep for half an hour or 45 minutes and wake up. And then I'd be done for the night. But I would have woken up several times. And that really impacted my resiliency and my enthusiasm for my days, which I didn't like. So last night, I don't remember waking up. So that doesn't mean you don't rustle and sort of move around or whatever. That's kind of normal. But I don't remember waking up. And that's the first time in ages. So I do think there's something to this business of protecting our eyes from junk light. And I also put those glasses on around supper time and wear them until I go to bed. And that is supposed to help with our own endogenous production of melatonin. So you can take melatonin as a supplement to support sleep, but the best melatonin is the melatonin you're making in your own cells. And I suspect that's where I'm finally starting to get, is that I'm making enough melatonin and I'm making it in my own system.